Recording locally. It is 7:03. How are we all doing? Let's open chat. Let's give me some GMs. It's a mildly hard class today, which is why I don't want to. We'll go slow. We'll try our best to cover everything. The good thing is that whatever we are covering today isn't really needed. We can dive directly into React. But if we do everything we are doing today, it creates a solid foundation for React. And you also understand why was React written a certain way. What is it doing under the hood? Okay? But if you don't understand some bits of today, because they're going to be slightly DSA heavy, data structures and algorithms, so feel free to not worry about them. If I'm being honest, today's class is I wouldn't call it an extra class, but more like a foundational class. And even if your foundations aren't great, you can still be a coder, but it's usually good to have solid foundations, which is what I'm hoping today's class gives you. Cool. Let's kick things off here. Oh, wrong place. Let's see. Whoop. All right. Hopefully I am sharing the right screen and you guys can see everything. Let me still confirm. Can you guys see my slides? Give me a yes or a no. Beautiful. All right. Yeah. So the people asking, yesterday's class I don't call it a prerequisite. Good to have. You might be able to chug along today, but if you've not done yesterday's class, today might be heavier than how heavy it already is. So feel free to drop off at some point in case you feel like some things from yesterday are becoming important. Although I feel if you understand a little bit of logic, you'll be able to make sense. Cool. All right. 4.2. Why front-end frameworks were introduced? Why is React Vue currently the way to write front-ends, and what problem do they solve? We'll understand this thing called reconcilers at a high level, and we'll introduce React, try to create a basic React app today and get intuition for the syntax. Slightly DSA heavy class, and all the notes are present here. So feel free to go to this URL and download the slides for today in case you want to copy over gists from there, which today we have a few gists. So might be good for you to just get the slides from here locally. I'm going to leave it here. Feel free to take a screenshot. I'll leave it here for 10 seconds and then we will proceed. Download the slides. It'll be helpful. All right. Jargon, DOM manipulation. This is something we discussed yesterday. Okay, the internet has static websites, dynamic websites. If you look at LinkedIn is heavily dynamic. But what do I mean when I say dynamic? I mean this. If you are on LinkedIn and you start to scroll down, you see more things get appended to the end. This is what is called dynamic. Basically means the HTML that you got back from the server initially is slowly getting updated somehow. This is what's called DOM manipulation and is a heavy concept. And before React came into the picture, through DOM manipulation, only people were able to create dynamic websites. The reason React came into the picture was it was very hard to do DOM manipulation, and React makes it slightly easier. But high level, to create a dynamic website, if you want people to allow people to have some functionality, for example, as they scroll, they get more and more posts. There needs to be a request that goes out to a backend, get back the new set of posts, and then finally append them at the end one by one, slowly and steadily. This is what is called DOM manipulation. More specifically, just this part of adding things to the end is called DOM manipulation. Even updating things on the DOM, if this notification bubble changes from 75 to 100, that is also DOM manipulation without a refresh, without you hard refreshing the page. If you are in this page and suddenly automatically you see something extra here, that is DOM manipulation. If I have a chat window open and I see more chat getting appended to the end of it, that is DOM manipulation. All of this is HTML being injected inside the DOM via JavaScript. The thing that we discussed yesterday, where we put something at the end of our simple calculator, and we were able to update the DOM when we clicked on a button. That's what we did yesterday. For those of you who don't know / missed yesterday's class, high level of yesterday was let's see if, oh, never mind. High level of yesterday was we created a simple calculator app where there were two buttons, button 1 and two input boxes, input box 1, input box 2. You would put some text in input box 1, put some text in input box 2, click on a button, and at the end of that button, you would see the sum of A plus B is something. That was the basic DOM manipulation we did yesterday. Today, we will create a slightly advanced use case, a more real world application. So it would involve heavy DOM manipulations. If you did not do yesterday's class might feel a little overwhelming. If you did yesterday's class, then also it will be a little overwhelming. And I'm receiving a call in the middle of. हाँ भाई, दो PPT शेयर हो रही है मतलब. Thank you, sir. All right. Kudos to our friend Aryan here. All right. I was saying, if yesterday's class you have done, then today's class will feel okay. Still might feel overwhelming. But if you've not done yesterday's class, today's class will most probably be overwhelming unless you've done DOM manipulation before. Cool. We are going to start with the coding. No more slides today. I'm going to write some hardcore code today. Some DSA logic. Let's get right into it. DOM manipulation is very hard to write as a developer. DOM manipulation, changing elements, is very hard to write as a developer, as a front-end developer. Making dynamic websites with the primitives that DOM provides you is very hard. This is why React came into the picture, because doing this with the primitive that DOM provides you is very hard. What do I mean when I say primitives? I mean these things right here. Yesterday we saw .inner HTML equal to something, document.get element by ID, things like these. So this is also the same thing where there are some other extra DOM APIs that you have access to, which we will explore today. And all of these are really hard to write whenever you want to create a dynamic website. What is the dynamic website we are creating today? We are creating a to-do application where someone can come, put in a title for a to-do, put in a description for a to-do, click on the add to-do button, and when they do, a to-do gets added here. The title, the description, and they also see a button at the end that says mark as done. If they click on it, this button changes to done, and that means they have done their to-do. It's a basic to-do application where people can add to-dos and mark them as completed. Cool. We have to code this today. There's actually some code already present here if you want to cheat a little, but would urge you to write this with me because it's not too difficult to write based on what we have written yesterday. Cool. So let's either go to Replit or locally, whatever works for you. I am maybe going to go local. So maybe you should go local as well. Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open an empty project here. Would urge you to do the same. So create an empty folder, which I'm doing on the side here. Let me also move it here. So I have a bunch of folders. I'm going to create an empty folder, call it class 4-2. I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code. Once I do, I'll add an index.html file here. And here is where I will be coding. Again, you can just copy over the solution for this from here if need be. But I'm going to write this myself. I would urge you to do the same. Cool. What is the problem statement? Creating a to-do application. Let's write the HTML first. We will get to JavaScript later on. An input box. Title. Another input box. You actually don't need to close these tags, but that's fine. And a button. Add to do. Let me save this and open this in Google Chrome. And this is what I see: a title, a description, and a button that says add to do. Now we need to give it some functionality. Also, maybe let's make it the same style as what is expected in the slides. So maybe add a few break statements. br/br. Refresh, looks decent. The only thing is, clicking on add to do should add something here at the bottom. And this time it's slightly more complicated than what we did yesterday. Yesterday we had to put just text. Now we have to put title followed by description followed by a button for each and every to do. This is going to be slightly hard. Let me add a script tag to the top and create a function called add to do, which takes nothing as an input. And I'm going to do button on click equal to add to do. Something we did yesterday, nothing new here. The new thing is the logic that we are going to add here. First, we will get the title, document.get element by ID, the ID of the first input. Now I haven't given it an ID yet, so let me do that. And then description. And let me just log these for now, just to make sure we are on the right track. I've logged title and description here. Let me refresh, put some title 1 and description 1. And if I click on add to do a few times, if I go to the console here, I see the first and the second element get logged. Now let me get their actual value and log that. ASD. I have these values in title and description. I need to append them to the bottom. Here is where we're going to learn a few new things. Until yesterday, what did we do? We said, okay, I'm going to add a new div at the end, call it container. And I'm going to simply do document.get element by ID container dot inner HTML equal to something. This worked until yesterday, because until yesterday it was a sum function. You put something here, click on something, HTML gets added, and anytime you change these inputs and run this, the HTML gets overridden. That is fine. In that case, doing a dot inner HTML equal to something is the right way to go. But what are we doing today? We are appending elements one by one. For this, we need to do something extra, something different, something slightly jarring. If you remember the slides, what did I say? Okay, DOM provides you a few things, and we have only used dot inner HTML until now. There are a few extra functions here, document.create element, document.append child, which we haven't yet used. These are the functions we have to use if we want to append to a certain div more and more elements. What do we want in the end? We want, okay, this last container, after one time I click add to do, it should look something like this. Div, or maybe, bold, or maybe div, title of to do 1, and then description of to do 1, and then a button which says mark as done. After one time add to do is clicked, this div should get this big child inside it, not simple text, not something as simple as this. It needs something very complex to get appended to it. How do we do this? Approach number 1, the ugly approach, is okay, Halkiyat, I will do this dot inner HTML equal to, just paste the whole div here, and you can actually do that. Make sure you don't have double quotes, you have this tilde over here, and then you can write multi-line strings, which I just did. This sort of works. Now if I refresh, put a title, description, I see something. Of course, the right things aren't being populated here, but you can very easily add title and description here, and this will work. Let me quickly show you how to do that. If you don't understand this syntax, it is fine, but this is the right way to add title and description. And now if I refresh, put new title here, put new disk here, click on add to do. I see new title, new disk, mark as done. Everything seems to be working as expected. Of course, these will get overridden, which is something we don't want. We want to append them one after the other, but still this is a great start. Question you might ask, what is this syntax? You don't have to understand this syntax. You can also write, the double quote syntax. I will put everything together in a single line, and then just do a plus, append these strings one by one. But this is another fancy way to create strings in JavaScript, where number one, if you rather than using double quotes, you are using these things, these tildes, which is this thing right here that you see, this key right next to, today you probably cannot see that, but like right below escape. If you use this, you can do multiple things. Number one, you can have multi-line strings, which means this is still a string, but you can write them in multiple lines. Cannot do that if you have a double quote. As you can see, it gives you an error. And you can do what's called templating. Okay, bhai, please replace this with the title variable. Please replace this with the description variable. If you ever start with $, bracket open, bracket close, whatever you write inside, it is going to pick the value and put it here. Similar to, so basically, let me make this full screen. Basically, hi there title and hi there plus title are the same thing. This is a slightly ugly way to concatenate strings. This is a slightly cleaner way to concatenate strings. And if I use the cleaner syntax, I almost have what I need. Only thing is, when I click on the button, it gets overridden. And I don't want it overridden. I want all the to-dos to get added one below the other. For that, what will I do? I showed you many functions inside this, and one of them was append child. This is an interesting function. The name itself says append child. Actually, even before that, I can just do this, right? Let me make it even easier. I say this thing dot inner HTML equal to the original inner HTML plus this new div. Does this work? Refresh, add to do. Never mind, did not work. Let me not do experiments in the middle of a class. This should have worked. Never mind. Let me not do experiments here. I mean, I'm sure there's an easy way to do it. You can, get the original string and then just concatenate them. Let me try that. I can be like, oh, that makes sense. Const original HTML equal to this. And then, be something like original HTML plus add this new div later on. This will keep appending things one by one. There might be some issue because this might not be a string. Let me try this. If it works, it's great. Not, there's some bug we can fix and try this. Seems to work. Okay. We have a to-do application. Great. What have I done? I said anytime add to-do gets called, get the title, get the description, get the original HTML in this container, which first of all, it will be empty. Eventually more things will get added. And then I say update it to original HTML plus this new div. If you look at the final container at the end, and click on inspect here, refresh. What is container initially? It is an empty div. If I add some things here, the empty div has one child which has 3 children, which is exactly what we needed. And if I click on it again, it has 2 children. Click on it again, it has 3 children, so on and so forth. This is one way of creating a to-do application. Only thing is this function doesn't do anything yet, which is fine, ignore. But there is a better way. This is a slightly ugly syntax to, write strings, shove them directly inside your HTML. The better way to do this, and this is where things get a little overwhelming, is by using the document.createElement syntax. If you understand this, you can understand the foundations for React and how React is able to achieve what it does. This part is important, so try to pay attention and try to digest as much as you can. What do I have to create over here? This structure, right? One way of doing it is this. Another way of doing it is, I first create the outer div by calling const outer div equal to document.createElement div. This outer div creates a DOM div element which is not currently present in the DOM. I repeat, if I ever go to my website, refresh, if I go to the console here and run document.createElement div and store it in a variable, if I log the variable, it says div/div. But notice as I hover over it, nothing gets highlighted here because this div is not yet part of the DOM. I can make it part of the DOM somehow, but for now, if I do document.getElementById title, it gives me a DOM element hovering over which highlights this. It tells me this is part of the DOM. But when I do a document.createElement div, it also creates a similar DOM element. It isn't yet part of this. The goal here is to create your structure in memory. For example, I've created a div. I might add a child to it, do a bunch of things, create the final thing I want to append, which is this thing right here. And then eventually I will append it to the container div. So the goal of createElement is to first create elements in memory and eventually put them in DOM. When I call a document.createElement div here, it is not yet put in DOM. My goal is to create something very similar to this. After I'm able to create this, I will append it to the DOM. Okay? Let me show you this slowly and steadily. This is what I want to create, which is a div which has 3 div children, div1, div2 and div3. So I will actually have to create this div also, this div also, this button also, put them in this div and then append this whole thing to the main DOM. हो गया confused? मैं भी हो गया, बोलते बोलते confused हो गया. Very confusing. So let's start small. Outer div dot inner HTML equal to title, and then document.getElementById container dot append child outer div. Let's do a smaller thing first. Ignore this. Let's look at the code. What do I do now? I say, I get the title description. I know no need for this. I create a div element. I give it some inner HTML. I append to container this outer div, which has just the title right now as its inner HTML. So now if I refresh the page and give it a title, as I keep adding them, if you look at the DOM, the container div has one div 1 by 1 appended, which is what? This outer div that I first created in memory and then appended to the container. I can actually try the same thing in the console here. If I go to the console and do number 1, const element equal to document dot create element div, and then do a element dot inner HTML equal to some random title, and then append to the container element, you see something gets added here. So I can do it here, I can do it here. Here, the thing to keep in mind is, unless you call this function, nothing is getting put on the DOM. Does not matter how many div elements you create in memory, unless you tell कि हाँ this container, please add this to one of your children, it doesn't get put in the DOM. Hopefully it is straightforward by now. Let's try to complete the assignment and then we will do a poll. The assignment is कि हाँ भाई हरकीरत, you created a div but it only has a title. This div actually needs to have 3 children in themselves: the title, the description and the button. How do you create that? For that, what you have to do now is think a little bit recursively. If you have heard of recursion, sort of what we have to do. कि हाँ, not exactly recursion but very close. कि you created a div, outer div. Now you have to create 3. Let's call this child div. Now you have to create 3 grandchildren div. कि हाँ भाई, these children also need to have, each one of these needs to have 3 children inside them. The final div needs to look something like the outer div, which needs to have 3 children inside, the title, the description and the button. How do you create that? For that, what you have to do now is think a little bit recursively. If you have heard of recursion, sort of what we have to do. कि हाँ, not exactly recursion but very close. कि you created a div, outer div. Now you have to create 3 grandchildren div. कि हाँ भाई, these children also need to have 3 children inside them. The final div needs to look something like the outer div, which needs to have 3 children inside, the title, the description and the button. the description, and the button. I have created this div, which I am calling child div. I have to create 3 more divs, append all 3 of these to the child div, and then append the child div to the container div. Do we understand this part? If yes, only then will I proceed. Maybe I'm just going too slow and you already understand all of this. (80-20). Pause time. So time to pause and take a breather here. Do we understand this part? Forget this too much that I did, but do we understand this code that I wrote, which is doing what we were hoping to do? Okay, add a title, add description, add to do, and they keep on getting added one by one to the DOM. When I append a string to the container and solve the same problem, do we understand this part? This is one way of solving this problem, Harkirat. Let's see, time to poll. With this part also you don't understand. Okay. So time for a small break for me here to understand how to navigate this class. We can take one of 2 routes here. We first complete the class and take doubts, or we, take doubts and then complete the class. Should we just continue, try to wrap things up in 1.5 hours and then do a doubt session at the end? I think that makes more sense, but I will leave it to you guys. Should I continue for now? Complete the class? It will be a heavy class, as I said initially. Mostly yes. I like that. So for people who are getting overwhelmed, one of 2 things is happening. Because if this is also overwhelming, that means yesterday you either weren't present or did not pay attention yesterday. So we'll take doubt session at the end. Let me cruise through the slides. Let's try to finish this by 8:30 and then I will take doubts at the end. Cool. For the people who are understanding now, let's try to copy over the gist that I had created, because we're slowly approaching exactly what we need. So let me copy over the gist which has all the code and take you guys through a slightly cleaner code actually that I had originally written. So I've pasted some code here. We will get to this code very soon. Let's see if it works as expected or not. Title, description, add to do. Seems like it is working. I can add more and more to-dos, and if I click on mark as done, it says done here. So we have a simple dynamic to-do application that I have created using DOM manipulation without using React. This is actually very easy to write when you're using React, much harder to write the way we have. Let's see the code that I have written. What do I say? I say button on click, call add to do. What does the add to do function do? Gets the title, gets the description, gets the parent, which is the, basically rather than calling it container, I have called it to-dos. You can call it container as well. We'll still do the same thing. Then I say parent.append child, create child with title, description, and global ID plus. What is this global ID plus, Harkirat? I am just giving an ID to each and every to-do, ID 1, ID 2, ID 3, so on and so forth, so that whenever someone clicks on mark as done, I know which specific button to change to done. That is why every to do here is being given a random ID, which is nothing but starts from 1. As you can see, let global ID equal to 1, starts from 1 and keeps going up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 like that. Cool. Parent.append child, create child. This is the function that creates the structure of your div. What do I mean when I say the structure of your div? Basically, if you look at the parent div, each one of these individual child, as you can see, div ID equal to 1, div ID equal to 2, div ID equal to 3. These all divs which have 3 grandchildren inside is created by this create child function. So the thing that you really have to learn / digest here is this function and what this does. If you understand this, you pretty much understand, DOM manipulation, that the way we need to understand it. Again, this is not how things are done in the real world. In the real world, you would just use React, which would encapsulate all of this complexity. But we want to understand how things were done before React. Okay? How does create child work? It first initializes an empty div object, then creates first grandchild. This shouldn't be called grandparent, it should be called grandchild, but assume grandparent for now. Const second grandchild, const third grandchild. Notice the first one is a div, second one is a div, third one is a button. Creates 3 of them, appends all 3 to child, which was the original div that was created, and then returns child. Also does a child.setAttributeID. Let's try to run all of these lines one by one in the browser. Okay? Let's look at how create child is doing what it's doing. What is the first line it runs? Const child equal to document.createElement div. Okay? Let's go to the browser. Let's open the console. Let me refresh the page. I paste this. Const child equal to document.createElement div. If I log child now, it is an empty div. As I said, it is still not present in the DOM. We have just created it in memory. What does that? What does in memory mean here? It means it's just a variable, and I can, whenever I want, I can push it to the DOM. I have not yet pushed it to the DOM. I created the empty div. Then I create this variable called first grandparent. Ideally, I should call it first grandchild, but either works. First grandparent equal to, I create another div. I give this div a name, title. First grandparent.innerHTML equal to title. And then I say, jo child tha, the original child, I'm going to append to the original child, first grandparent. Now let me log the child variable. What is it? It is no longer an empty div. It is a div which has a div which has a title. I am slowly creating the structure that I want to append here when I'm ready at the end. When I'm ready at the end, when this guy has a title, has a description, and has a button, I will take the whole thing and shove it in the DOM, which is what? Which is basically this thing right here. If you look at what happens when I click on add to do, what gets added to the div? A div which has 3 children. This div with 3 children is what I'm trying to create here. I'm trying to create them in memory. Then I'm trying to return that created div which has 3 children. And then finally I'm calling parent.append child, where parent is this container. Do we now at a high level understand what create child is doing? It is basically creating the structure of this div that is eventually shoved to the parent being this container, which is this div right here, which as you can see is initially empty. But as you click on this button and add to do gets called, we create the big child element. So this is very similar to this, right? Append child div / div, and then, has 3 children div with the title, description, and the button. This function and this function are effectively the same, only create child is actually creating the DOM object. Here I'm just giving it a string. This is a slightly cleaner way of doing it. This is a slightly ugly way of doing it. You can still do this and you get the same outcome, but this one is slightly cleaner. Do we understand this high level a little bit? Not at all. Let's do a poll here. Either way, we will proceed and take this thing at the end. This is a hard class, as I said. I'm not too worried if it's at 80-85% right now. Okay, but we do understand this well. Okay, good. Great. So it's 85%, which is great, we should proceed. Great. If 85% understand this, great. We are done with the first part. We have a to-do application. Only thing I haven't discussed is how does this function work? How does mark as done change the specific button to done? And the answer is, whenever I create a child, I do a div ID equal to 1. I give it an ID, which is the ID of that specific to do. And whenever I'm creating the button, as you can see, I say the button.setAttribute on click mark as done ID. Now this is another slightly hard concept to understand. Okay, what am I doing here? Firstly, what is set attribute? Set attribute lets you set attributes on a specific tag. What are attributes? Type equal to text, ID equal to title, and on click equal to mark as done one. All of these are attributes, and you can programmatically add attributes, which is what I'm doing here. Okay, I say anytime this button is clicked, call mark as done with this specific ID. The question is, what is this mark as done function and what does it do? If you look at it, what does it do? It first gets the specific to do parent, which basically means, gets either this guy, or if there is another one here, gets the specific to do document.getElement by ID, to do ID, and then says parent dot children of 2 dot inner HTML equal to done. Parent dot children will log all three of these. Children of 0 would be this, children of 1 would be this, children of 2 would be this. It says children of 2 dot inner HTML equal to done, which basically means it changes this to done. And that is how we have implemented clicking on mark as done. This part, even if you don't understand, it's fine. The important bit here is how we append to the container at the end. Let me refresh here and let me show you the same thing here. What does document.getElement by ID 1 give you? It gives you this specific parent with 3 children. What does this dot children of 2 return you? It returns you this button. And what happens if I say dot inner HTML equal to Harkirat? The text changes to Harkirat. So this is another way to manipulate the DOM programmatically in the dumb way, which is like the pre-React days, how we used to make a dynamic website. Okay? High level checkpoint here. Quick poll and then some questions maybe, and then we will proceed. Yahan say it's slightly easier, but let's do a poll first. All right, good. So if it is this good, which is like 86-85%, let's continue a bit and then we will take a break at 7:50. 7:50 to 8 we will take break. People can go to mess and other people can ask questions. Let me teach a little bit more for the next 10 minutes. Okay? All right, let's go to keynotes here. Let's go through the notes a bit. We understood document.createElement, little bit at least, document.append child, document.set attribute, element.children. These are the 4 extra high level DOM APIs I wanted you to learn. There are more, but these are enough. There's one called remove child for actually, removing a child. We'll get to that later on. High level, these are good enough. Using these, you can always create a fancy website that's appending more and more divs as you scroll, similar to LinkedIn. Cool. Start get to the application. This was the HTML. This was the JS code. Feel free to look at it. Feel free to take a screenshot. It's present in the slides. Feel free to marinate it. The important bit here is this function. If you understand this function, your life is sorted. All right. The problem with this approach, very hard to add and remove elements. No central state. Focus a lot on this word because this becomes very important as we get into React. What do I mean when I say state? What if there is a server where these to-dos are put? Okay? Abhi to you were like, okay bro, I'm going to click a button, a function will get called, I will append something. What if there is a server where, this specific, the backend for this to-do app is hosted and this app is being updated by someone on their mobile app. All websites that you see, or specifically like a to-do application, if you see, that to-do application will usually have multiple clients, not just one. For example, if I share my iPad here, if this is the backend, let's say you have a full stack to-do application, not just, a kiddie one like we have right now, it will have a backend and you can have a mobile app for it. You can have a website for it. Let's say you add a to-do here on your mobile app. This change goes to your backend and then eventually somehow that change needs to reach your website as well, right? Websites are dynamic that way. If you are in Google Docs, in one window and another window, the change propagates from here to here, right? It isn't necessary कि the change would be as simple as कि हाँ भाई title, description, button, click on the button and something gets appended. Maybe something gets removed, maybe something gets updated. A lot of things happen as the website changes. So specifically for your to-do application, if there is a backend that is, returning you the updated list of to-dos every time, usually you will not get, the backend will tell you, okay, plus to-do 1 and minus to-do 2, and then, update to-do 3. That will not happen. What will the backend tell you? Backend will simply say, okay, bhai, I know you were here and waiting, and this window was open. While your window was open, someone on another mobile app added something. Here is the updated list. What will the backend tell you? It will tell you, here is the updated list of to-dos. Render them on the screen, please. This is the updated list. Now, this is a problem. Until now, we were assuming that bhaiya, there is a only function we need to support is add to-do. But now I'm saying that in the real world, websites will always return you the new list. That, haan, bhai, this is the new list. Render it here. It will not tell you that haan, this is what got added, this is what got removed. You somehow have to calculate that haan, this is the new list and this is the old list. Something got added, something got removed. What are those things? And based on that, you need to update the DOM. So what we have written until now isn't actually enough to support a real dynamic website. Sharing the wrong screen again. So let me change that. All right. What if what we have done discussed until now is good, it's great, but not enough. What if there is a server where you get these to-dos, where these to-dos are put? What if you update a to-do from your mobile app? You will get back a new array of to-dos on the front end. You will have to update the DOM then. How will you update the DOM then? You only have an add to-do function until now. You've only written a simple create child function or an add to-do function that you can call to add more and more to-dos. Now you're getting a new list of 20 to-dos, let's say, or you're getting, 5 updated to-dos, 3 deleted to-dos, 20 no more added to-dos. You don't have an update to-do or remove to-do function. How would you solve this problem? Okay, you've been given a to-do array and you need to put this versus you need to support a button functionality. The question or the problem statements has changed now. Okay, you don't have to support an add to-do button. You will be given some to-dos from the backend. You need to render them. You will be given them again after some time, and then you need to re-update this specific list. Okay? This is something we have to do next. This will be the input or what's called the state. Okay, the backend would return you an array of 2 to-dos, let's say, which is ID1 go to gym, and this will be ID2. Could be anything, take a class. And then you have to render that thing on the right. How can you do this? How do you write the code for this? If you can write a function that takes the state as an input and creates the output on the right, that is much more powerful than our original approach. I keep saying state here because this is how React works. In React, you have what's called a global state, or basically an array, a list of strings, an object, whatever. Given this, you have to render a website. And similarly, the problem statement for us today is, given such an array, write the logic that takes this array as an input and creates this. And then that function, if it's called again with different inputs, it needs to, clear this and create the new to-do list here, given this state. So you have to create a state mapping, given this state, write a function that is able to create these DOM versus our original approach, which was this. Cool. Going to take a pause here. Basically, this is what we have to do. Given a state, write a function that outputs this on the screen. Okay? Pause time, question answering time, break until 8 p.m. Going to open chat for any questions now. Link to slides is right here. You can copy this URL. Slide not updated. I think the slides are here. Let me confirm. Yeah, there you go. Can you explain the states? Oh, okay. That is something we'll get to. High level. It is a variable which has how your application should look. Now, your application can be very complicated, right? LinkedIn is a very complicated page, has a bunch of areas, but effectively, it's an array of posts It is a username, which is Harkirat for me, a user profile image, which is my profile image, user notification count, which is the number of notifications I have, things like these. So you can actually take the whole LinkedIn page and convert it into a very big object. This is the state of the LinkedIn application. Just these variables are rendered in a pretty format, but under the hood, these are the variables. That's what I mean when I say state. What is global child plus plus? It's actually global ID plus plus. And what it is I have created a global ID called 1, and any time a to-do is added, I say title, description, and the ID for the new to-do is this, which is incrementing by 1. You can also do this global ID, and then in the end do a global ID equal to global ID plus 1. Both do the same thing. The idea is every to-do gets a unique ID, so that I can call mark as done with that specific ID, and I set the attribute ID with that specific ID, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that whenever mark as done is called, that specific to-do gets updated. Wow. Okay, there we go. Sorry guys, machine hung for a while. Explain third parent.set attribute on click mark as done. Explain the on click argument. Oh, any button on click argument. What was the on click argument here? Button on click equal to add to do. Whenever someone clicks on this button, this function gets called. Similarly, whenever someone clicks on this button, on a to do, this function should get called with that specific ID for that to do, which is why I've said set attribute on click is this. On click on a button, what is this third grandchild? It is a button, right? And button, what does the on click attribute do there? Whatever is present here as the value gets function called whenever this button is clicked. Sir, can you explain us the off for next week for revision? You mean topics? Most probably we'll start React and do like a little bit of recap of everything. By browser extension, can we use DOM manipulation? By making browser extension, you can do that. Yes. I mean, I understand your question, and yes, you can do DOM manipulation if you're an extension and you've been given the right set of permissions. I'm able to set the ID for a child, but not set the ID for the first grandchild or second grandchild. You should be able to. You can do, third grandparent dot set attribute ID, child 1, child dash, plus ID or something like that. This should work. Why should one do extract, not slides uploading? I don't get that. Recap. Let's do a recap. Can we create a modern website like LinkedIn using this? Yes. Believe it or not, this is how modern websites were created until React came into the picture. So until 2012, there were some frameworks like Backbone.js or jQuery that would make it slightly easy to do these DOM manipulations. But yes, even the best websites out there were built using all of this ugly logic, which, as you can see, even for such a simple application, it's so hard to assume as your application grows to as big as LinkedIn, how hard it becomes. So eventually people, realized React is a better way to do this. Could you repeat everything in short? Yes. Let me do a quick recap here. I said, why do we need front-end frameworks? That is the high level of today's class. Just understanding, what is the need of front-end frameworks? Let me make sure I am sharing the right screen. Okay, what is the need of front-end frameworks? I said, before front-end frameworks, how would you create a dynamic website? What is a dynamic website? Something like this, something where more and more things are getting appended to the DOM or removed from the DOM as time goes by. Okay? For LinkedIn, that is as you scroll, new posts come from the backend and you append them to the bottom. This is called DOM manipulation, and DOM manipulation as a developer is hard. That is what we just did, and boggled so many heads. What is the add child function? What is it doing under the hood? DOM manipulation is generally hard. It's a very ugly way to create dynamic websites. But unfortunately, it is the only way to create dynamic websites. Even when you're using React also under the hood does these DOM manipulations. Only, they're deferred to the library, so you don't see them. But unfortunately, the browser was built in a way that, if you want to create a dynamic website, these are the 5 primitives you have: add child, remove child, append child, set attribute, things like these. Use these and create your, dynamic website if you want to. So, you don't have website. Whoever created websites for HTML, they said this is the only way to do it. Making dynamic websites with the DOM primitives that DOM provides you is very hard. We just saw for a simple application how much code we had to write. Let's try to create a to-do application using DOM manipulation. So then I introduced a few DOM APIs that you have access to, and I showed you how to create something like this. I said this is what the final code looks like. You write some basic HTML and you say anytime you click on the add to do button, the add to do function gets called. And what does this function do? First control reaches here, gets the title description and gets the reference to the parent, which is this div right here. Then it says parent.append child, whatever this function returns. And what does this function return? It takes title, description, and the ID for this specific to do as input. And this part is what you can think of a black box if you want. I mean, you don't have to dive deep into this part, but high level, what is it doing? It is creating that inner div. What do I mean when I say inner div? I mean this div right here, a parent div with an ID, which has 3 children. That is why I call the first one a child, which is this guy right here, because it will be the child to the container. And other 3 I called first grandparent I've written, it should be grandchild because it's a grandchild to the container. So first grandchild I create, second grandchild I create, third grandchild I create. Append all 3 of these to this child. As you can see, child dot append. What do I have written? Child dot append child first grandparent, child dot append child second, child dot append third. I append all 3 of these to this, return this, and that gets appended to this to do's, which is how we have created a dynamic website that you see on the right. Add to do, add to do, add to do. As I add more and more get appended here. That's a high level recap of what we have done. इसके बाद वैसे I said कि हाँ, this is good but not great. There is no central state. Now state is very important as a concept. High level, it means a very long object which contains the structure of your application. Let's say your application looks like this. I can say कि हाँ, my application is this. Assume this was an empty input box, this was an empty input box. Then what is my application? Go to gym, mark is done. Go to gym, mark is done. I can say कि हाँ, this much input is enough for me to know कि हाँ, this is what I have to create. If someone tells me, Harkirat, this is your state for your application, I can write a function that can render this on the screen. So that is the next problem statement for us. Okay, given a state, which could be anything, it could be an array of 10 to-dos, array of 3 to-dos. I mean, it cannot be anything. It will be an array of to-dos, which could be 3 to-dos, 5 to-dos. The description will change, title will change. Write a function that puts the state on the DOM. If this becomes one element, then it needs to delete some elements from here and make sure there's just one here. If this becomes 10, then it needs to add more things. That's the next thing we have to do. Please explain set, attribute, and children. Yes. So what is children? If you look at this container, how many children does it have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so many. If you look at this one, how many children does this have? It has 1, 2, 3. What is a child? Basically, if you think of this as a tree, and this is the first node of the tree, which has 2 children, HTML and body. If you look at body, it has 1, 2, 3, too many children. And then what do we have to do? We have to be like, hey, bhai, anytime someone clicks on, a button, I have to update this to resolved. So what do I say? I say I will first get this top level parent, document.get element by ID 1. I will get the top level parent, which has 3 children. Now I will be like dot children, and it gives me by first child, second child, third child. For the third child, I need to change it from mark as done to done. So what do? I say children of 2 dot inner HTML equal to done. If I press enter, if I go to the top, this became done. So it is just children just lets me access the 3 children of that div, and I want the third child, which is this guy right here, which is why I first get this and then reach here and then update the HTML. I can also, in the logic of create HTML, create child, I can also just, give an ID to this guy. Third grandparent dot set attribute ID of button dash 1, button dash 2, and then I don't have to do the children logic. The other thing that you asked was set attribute. Set attribute lets you, set an attribute on a tag. On click is an attribute. ID is an attribute. So if I have to do a div ID equal to container, and if I have to do this programmatically, then I have to do whatever the reference to this element is, dot set attribute ID container. So that's what set attribute lets you do. It lets you set an attribute. The one that we are interested in is on click to be mark as done with the specific ID. When we create child, does it not bind to the DOM? When we create child, Nothing binds to the DOM until you call document, something dot append child. Creating a child does nothing. Until you have called append child, nothing would happen. If you look at it here, I called append child once, 3 times here and 1 time here. When I call append child here 3 times, this child gets 3 like grandchildren or whatever, but this child is still not in the DOM. Only when to the main parent, which is actually in the DOM, do I append something. Does my child also reach the DOM? Do my grandchildren also reach the DOM? State abhi karenge, koi issue nahi hai. What is the difference between append child and append? I have no idea. Do they do the same thing? Probably. I don't know. There's maybe a subtle difference if at all. Slides link is this right here. Give time to code. Okay. That'll take really long if you want to code this yourself, which is why I've left like a few take home assignments in this class later on. Okay. Slides are here, guys. This is the URL. Another approach for markers and button, we can also add exactly. Someone also said this, give an ID to every button. You don't have to do the children logic, which works. Can you go through the syntax again of how DOM is working to create div? Sure, let's do that real quick and then we'll restart the class. The way to do that is, if anyone wants to take a screenshot of this, take a screenshot of this. I'll give you 5 seconds. This is where the slides are at. Let's do a quick walkthrough. Refresh. What is this empty div here? Container. Let me write something here. Let me write container here. Okay, this is my container. Let's say I want to put something below this. Add a bunch of children here. What can I do? I can be like document const element equal to document dot create element div. If I now log element, I see an empty div. I can be like element dot inner HTML equal to whatever. Harkirat Singh. If I now log element, I still see div, but now it has a Harkirat Singh. Notice this is not yet present in the DOM. This is still outside as a variable. When I do document.get element by ID to do's, what was it called? Container. Yeah. Dot append child element is when you see Harkirat Singh gets logged here. I think I can do this multiple times. If I do the same thing again, no, I can only do it once. So I can only append a single, element reference once and then that gets appended. If I want to do another one, I'll have to create another child. So that's a high level of how you can create elements in memory and then append them one by one to a specific div. Cool. 8 baj gayi. 8 o'clock. So feel free to breathe in, breathe out. We are going to do one more thing, which is basically the genesis of React. And then we will try to do a basic React app, basically do the same thing in React and see how easy our lives become once we move to React. But even if we don't get there, it's fine. Breathe in, breathe out. Half an hour more of class, maybe 40 minutes. And then we will take more doubts. Okay? Now let me revert to the problem statement. This is the problem statement, guys. You will be given an array. You have to write a function that takes this array as an input and renders these. If there are 2 elements here, renders these 2 on the screen. If there was 1 element here, renders this one on the screen. It is supposed to overwrite the original thing. For example, if originally there was 10 to-dos here and you would see 10 here. If I call this function again with 2 to-dos, you need to see 2 only. 8 need to get removed. Okay? You have to write all of this logic. Let's see how I would approach this problem. Let me revert everything here. All right. Let me revert everything but the create child function. Create child function is slightly important. Okay? And let's suppose we don't have to support this mark as done functionality. Let's remove that. We have a create child function which, given a title, description and ID, creates a div which has title, description and a button and returns it to you. This is the crux of the function that that you have to create once and then forget about. Oh, thank God, this function is written. This will do what it wants. I'm just going to use it now. Now, ignore this. Let's write a new function here. Call it update DOM according to state. You can call it something else as well. And this will take state as an input. I am telling you that state will follow some constraints. State will always be an array. Every element of state would have a title, description and ID. Okay, I am upfront only telling you okay, this state will follow some constraints. You will always get the right object here. Now that you have this, how would you update the DOM so that if there are 3 here, you see 3 in the DOM. If there are 2 here, you see 2 in the DOM, irrespective of what the DOM looked like before. I repeat, does not matter if there were 10 here. If this gets called with 2, you remove the 10 and then you add the 2. This is one way of doing it. You can be like, okay, bhai, let me get the container, document.get element by ID container, and let me clear it. Let me make it empty first. .inner HTML equal to empty. Great. I cleared it. And now for every state variable that I have the create child function. I will create the child and append it. So what can I do? I can be like state for let I equal to 0, I less than state dot length, I plus plus, const child equal to create child with state of I dot title, state of I dot description, state of I dot ID, and then parent, which is basically this thing right here. Parent equal to this dot append child. Is this much good enough? Have we created what I was asking you to create? Okay, given a state as an input, render the right set of to-dos on the right, and ignore the original thing that you had. This is the new state. This is the updated state. You have to make sure the updated state appears on the DOM. If I save this, and feel free to take a screenshot here, although I've already posted the solution for this in the gist, which is in the slides. If I go now, let me also now call update according to state with whatever. Let's say I call it with an empty array for now to begin with. Okay. If I look at the DOM, it gives me no to-dos here. Seems like it's working as expected. I can get rid of the add to-do function now. There is no add to-do functionality anymore. There is a server. Server is returning you the divs. That is the thing you have to sort of, respect always. The user is not allowed to add to-dos. Those to-dos are just coming from somewhere. This is just a read-only UI. Okay. Now, let me add some, real data here. Title, go to gym, and then whatever description, go to gym from 5 to 7, then ID 1. If I refresh, it does not work because I have a bug. If I look at the console, there is an error. And what is the error? Cannot read property of undefined null. Container. This, what is, oh, I know what it is. So here is the issue. This script is actually present above the div where the container is created. So the script will actually get called even before the div is created, which is why there's an error. So what you can do is copy over the script, remove it from here, paste it to the end. I will justify this very soon, so don't worry if you don't understand this yet, but I've just moved all the logic below the container, and you can do that in HTML. You can just, put script inside body. It's fine. It works. Where I, define create child, define this, and where I now call update DOM according to state. Now, if I go to the browser and refresh, you see whatever I'm setting as the state is getting rendered here. If I change this to, go to gym 2, and then this, if I refresh, I now see 2. This is what I wanted you to do. Question is, why did I want you to do this? Like, this seems like, an ugly way to do it. If I could, Harkirat, if you knew only upfront this is what it looks like, you could have just created them inside div, and first wale ka title, and then div, and then second wale ka title, so on and so forth. Why did you use all this JavaScript logic to implement this? Great question. The answer is, in the real world, you won't have access to this upfront. This will come from a server. In fact, I have created a simple server, some-server/todos. If you go to this endpoint, which I will post in chat now, you will see random set of to-dos coming back. Sometimes it is an empty array, sometimes it is a full array. Length keeps changing. Everyone will get random to-dos. In the real world, you will have such a backend that is returning you the to-dos. and then you have to, given these to-dos, render them on the screen. And these to-dos could be very dynamic. You are a user of an application. You might have a mobile app from which you change them, and then you might have another desktop app from which you change them. Your browser needs to keep refreshing every few minutes or every few seconds. What is the latest data? What is the latest data? And the server will return you the latest data. Now that you have the latest data, what will you do? Will you, figure out the difference, somehow call add to do? Or now that you have this very nice function, you will just call this function with the new data, and your life is sorted. You have a dynamic front end that does everything you want to do with a single function call. This is why I wanted to introduce, given a state, create whatever you need on the screen. And this state becomes very important when we move to React. But at a high level, do you understand why we have created this function, and also how this function works, and why this would be useful when we have a real backend which will be returning us data, and we can just, so what will we do in the real world? You will do something like this: window.set interval. Every 5 seconds, send a request to the some server, and then get back the response. Or maybe let's do an async function to await of fetch. And then JSON equal to await rest.json, and then call this. The reason update DOM according to state is so powerful is because the backend is going to return you the state. You are going to call this function, and then your front end is sorted. If somehow you are able to delegate all of this to a library like React, then what do you have to do as a front end developer? Write an interval, every 5 seconds get me the latest data, and then call this function and delegate it. And then someone else does the heavy lifting of actually putting it to the DOM. This someone else is what is React. And the important thing to keep in mind is the state. React effectively asks you for a state and a few more things, and then updates your DOM completely. So your life as the front-end developer becomes much easier because you no longer have to write all of this grandpapa logic. You just have to get the state, call a function, it does what it's supposed to do. Let's see if this works as expected or not. This might not. This is the first time I'm trying it. Refresh. Nothing happens. Let's wait for 5 seconds. Let's see if a request goes out after 5 seconds. A request does go out and data does come back, but nothing gets rendered here. Why? Oh, the data that we get back from the server, JSON.todos is what I need to send, because the todos key has all the todos. Okay? Save, refresh, wait for 5 seconds. There we go. We got 2 to-dos from the backend, and we see 2 to-dos rendered here. After 5 seconds, we got 3 to-dos from the backend, and 3 got rendered here. Our function has done what it's supposed to do. Is this clear? Do we understand how we have created a slightly dynamic website, how we have high level understood state, and how we can write a function? Let me also justify this so you guys can try this on your machines as well. Paste it in chat. Let me do a poll if we understand what is happening here. There are some bugs you see undefined here. Probably the backend is returning a different thing, but should be fixable fairly easily. Time to do a poll before we proceed. There are a few flaws in this approach, which is what we'll discuss next, and then we'll get to React. Great. Not bad, not good. But okay, was supposed to be a little overwhelming. Let's 8:30 tak target to finish everything, and then let's do more chat, more questions. Okay. This I've posted in chat. Feel free to try this out locally, at least get an intuition. But at a high level, what have I done since the starting of the video, like in the last 10 minutes? In the last 10 minutes, I said, okay, bhai, in the real world, what happens is, the real world isn't so ideal. your application has an input box and a button. And then you can write some logic कि हाँ भाई create element and push it to the DOM and your life is sorted. In the real world, this data could come from anywhere. The current set of to-dos can come from anywhere. A lot of times, or most of the times, they come from the backend. When you load page, when you go to mytodoapp.com, or in your mobile app, you open your to-do application, a request goes out to the backend. Backend returns you the current set of to-dos. And what you do is you silently ask the backend, bro, was there any update? Was there any update? Was there any update? Every 5 seconds. And the backend will return you the new list. The backend won't return you, okay, these 3 got added, these 2 got removed, and these 2 got updated. So please change that. The backend will just give you the new list. And generally also, it is a good idea, okay, given a very big application like LinkedIn, where post 1, post 2, post 3, notifications 30, notifications 20, connection requests 10, and then name Harkirat. This can be represented as a very big object. Name Harkirat. Photo URL, whatever is the photo URL, notification count 20, connection count 20, and then posts, which is an array, which has, title, description, so on and so forth. In the real world, any website you look at, you can convert it into a JSON. You can say this is the current state of the application, and it would be very nice if there was a library that takes this state as the input plus some logic ki haan bhai, this is how you render the state. There is some library that comes into the picture, which in this case is React, and takes care of how to put elements on the DOM, how to remove elements from the DOM. That is what React lets you do. That is what we have tried to simulate a little bit. Ki haan, if we were in the React days, how would we create something like React? And I said creating something like React is similar to creating something like a function like this, which takes the current state as an input and updates the DOM. Same thing that I was showing here on the slides. Take some logic, with this what it is we'll get to, but some state it takes as input, and React will take care of rendering things on the DOM, which is what is happening currently as well. Cool. That's a high level. We'll take more questions. Let's proceed. Let's understand some flaws with this approach, and then let's get into React. Right. This is the code that I wrote at a high level. This was the original code, sorry. And what approach did we take? कि हाँ, given a state, how will we render things here? We said clear the parent element. सबसे पहले तो call parent element.innerHTML equal to empty, and then call add to do. Oh, I'm sharing the wrong screen again. Hello. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. My bad, guys. What did I say? Given that state as an input and this function render this, how did we do it? We said clear the parent div. Call parent div.innerHTML equal to empty. Call add to do on every element. That's exactly what we did, right? If you look at the function that I just wrote, what does it do? First clears the element, and then every element in the state calls create child on them, appends the child. This is one way of doing it, but this is not the most optimal approach. The better approach is don't clear the DOM upfront. Update based on what has changed. The problem with this approach is if you look at the website right now, you will notice a flash every 5 seconds. First, we are clearing the DOM, then we are adding more things to the DOM. So if you really notice with your naked eye, it's very hard to tell, but first there is a flash of empty screen, and then you see the new update to do. That's what the logic says as well. First it clears it, then it adds more things. This is one way of doing it. This is not very optimum. Few reasons this isn't optimal. What if the backend returns you the same state again? You are still clearing everything and then adding them back. That's bad. Bunch of other reasons as to why it's bad. What is the better way of doing it? How does it change? The better way of doing it is, okay, bhai, anytime the state returns you something you get back from the server, you calculate the diff. I repeat. You calculate the difference. Okay, bhai, 5 seconds ago, the to-dos looked something like this. Title, description, an ID. And after 5 seconds, let's say a new state came, which has 3 elements. you can calculate the diff. You can be like, has the first element changed a bit? Has the element with ID 1 changed a bit? Yes or no? If yes, then you will have to update that specific element in the DOM. You don't have to clear the whole thing, just update its title because that is what is changed. So the whole process of, anytime the state changes, calculate the diff, and based on the diff, update the DOM. Don't clear the DOM and then re-add things. Based on the diff, calculate this needs to be changed a bit, so let me change the title here. This needs to be removed, so let me call remove child on this one. This needs to stay as it is because it was part of here as well and is exactly the same. And let's say there was something extra here I need to append. This is a slightly better way of solving the same problem. Again, it's very hard for the naked eye to tell we are clearing the screen and re-adding everything. Again, the wrong screen I'm sharing. But this is the better approach. This is a take-home assignment to implement the better approach. I will give you some hints, but at a high level. The thing that I was saying was, you need to calculate diff always, which means you need to remember the old to-dos. Anytime a new to-do comes, you still need to have the existing state so that you can calculate the diff. And this existing state is what's called the virtual DOM at a high level. When we go to React, React does the same thing, calculates differences. It's the most optimal front-end framework. It will not clear your screen if you give it a new state and add everything back like we just did. That's us dumb developers. The people at React have written very nice difference calculation algorithms, and for them, they always remember the old state, get the new state, and calculate the diff between them, and based on the diff, do some things. This remembering of old state, or a place where they have a blueprint of the DOM, is what's called the virtual DOM in React. High level thing to know. We will discuss more in detail in weeks to come. Cool. Now, I'm going to show you some code. This is how to create a to-do application using DOM manipulation the right way. The right way being calculating the diff and then calling, update child, remove child, or add child, add to-do based on the diff that is calculated. High level code you need to understand thoda bhi. And then this is the assignment for this week. This is DSA heavy. This is supposed to be jarring. This is a hard assignment, but I think through the week you should be able to do it. If not, I will release a video where I explain all of this much better. But let me give a high level of what this is, then we'll move to React. This says, what does it say? Let's say we don't have the backend logic. We still are at our original problem. What was the original problem? You have two input boxes followed by a button. Anytime a button is clicked, this function will get called. And now this function, what does it do? Can I zoom in somehow? Let me try to zoom in here. What does the add to do function do? It gets the title, the description, and pushes to a global state variable. So I've created a global state variable called to do state. And notice I also have another variable called old to do state. This will keep track of the existing state. This will keep track of the new state. And here is where we have to write some logic, which is the assignment of how you can do what we did a few slides ago, but slightly better. If you don't understand right now, it's fine. But let me give a high level for people who want to try this. I say I update the state variable, and then I called update state. This is the same function that I showed a while back, where I can also send a backend request here and get the current set of to-dos and call update state. But notice update state now. What does it say? It says calculate the diff between the new to-dos and the old to-dos. More specifically, find out what to-dos are added, what are deleted, and what are updated. So basically fill these three elements, these three arrays, calculate these three arrays, and then call either add to do, which was the big function we wrote a few slides ago, or remove to do, or update to do. What does remove to do? It removes the element from DOM. What does update to do? It updates the title description and the button description based on the new element or the new thing that you got from the backend, or however the state has changed, and then finally sets old to do state to new to dos. This is actually the right way of how React works under the hood. You call a function with some updated state, and that function finds the diff and then calls one of these three functions to update the DOM. It does not clear the whole thing basically and re-add everything. It either updates some things, removes some things, and adds some things. But this is a high level assignment for this week. Don't worry about it yet. if you don't want to do it yourself, it's fine as well. I will create a video where I solve this assignment much better. This is the foundation of how React is built, but we don't have to understand it. We have to understand how to actually like use React high level. So we can just dive into that very soon. But if you want to target this is a good foundational exercise to do. Okay. What is the easiest way to create a dynamic website? Update a state variable, which is what we are doing here. Delegate the task of figuring out the diff to a hefty function, which is this update state function, which is what React does. And then tell the hefty function how to add, update, and remove elements. These three things, even in React, you sort of have to do. And here also you have to do. So basically, these are the three steps of how you create a dynamic website. Update a state variable. Even in React, you will see this. Okay, we will update a state variable once, which is basically this function right here. Delegate the task of figuring out the diff to a hefty function, which is this function right here. And then tell the hefty function, okay, this is how you add elements, this is how you remove elements. Something we will see. These two things are usually done by a front-end developer, even in React. This is what the crux of React is, calculating this diff and figuring out what to call add on, what to call remove on, what to call update on. There is a reason that React is used, is not just a website framework. It can be used to create mobile apps. It can be used to create, native applications, because in each one of these, the goal of React is just to calculate the diff. What do I need to call remove on? What do I need to call add on? This logic is written by the developer, and this logic is written by the logic to update the state is written by the developer. More specifically, so if you really want to know, this logic is actually written by us developers. This logic is actually written by a library called React DOM or a library called React Native, which tells how to add elements and remove elements. And this is React. So if someone asks, what does React do? React actually just calculates the diff. What does React DOM do? React DOM is what actually tells React, okay, this is how you put things on the DOM. This is how you remove things from the DOM. What does React Native do? React Native tells React, this is how you put things in a native application. This is how you remove things from a native application. And this is the general developer logic that we guys have to write. So usually we're just focused here. This part React, this part React DOM or React Native, based on whether you're creating a mobile app or whether you're creating a website. Cool. All right, G. Let's get into React. Let's do a high level poll first, and then let's get into some basic React application. Then we'll do doubts. How are we doing? Great. This is great. Beautiful. 87%. Again, we'll take doubts later on. And let's start to harden our concepts a little bit and see how, as the React developer, you have to just write a very minimum code and your life is pretty much sorted. You don't have to worry about all this very big logic that we had to write. React sort of makes it very easy for us. Okay? So everyone who has Node.js in your machine, I would urge you to go to Visual Studio Code and create a empty. No, actually, don't go to Visual Studio Code. Go to your terminal. Go to your terminal and navigate to whatever folder you want to create your React project in. I'm going to go to CD project 100x devs cohort 2. And here, run this command. Like wherever you want to create your React application, run this command. npm create vite at the rate of latest. Give it a project name. I'm going to give it class-for2. So Vite, this thing that we're using here, is a framework that gives you a basic boilerplate code for whatever you want. Svelte, Preact, React, Vue, vanilla JavaScript. We are going to use React. So I'm going to select React here. You should do the same. It might take some time for Vite to load on your side, but once it does, give your folder name, select React here and select JavaScript here, and you should be good to go. Open this folder that has been created, class 422. I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code. You should do the same. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes. 1 minute is good enough, I guess. 60 seconds. Array to do clock. Never mind. Visual Studio Code, file, open. Thirty more seconds, guys. All right. Now, let me take you a little bit through the structure of a React application. You will see a main.jsx file here, and you will see it imports two libraries, React and React DOM. As I said, if you use React is not a website framework. It is a remove difference calculating framework, a framework that is able to calculate कि हाँ, based on the current state, something should get removed from a native app, a website, or something should get added to a native app or website. This is how you actually tell React कि हाँ, you are currently in the context of a website. Please, remove things from the DOM, add things to the DOM because you are in a website right now. If I was using React Native, or if I was trying to create a native application, I would import, React Native from React Native. That's how my application would grow. Cool. Okay. I have React DOM. And in the end, it does something with the app here. This is very new syntax that I don't understand. Looks very similar to HTML, how we write HTML tags /HTML. Something similar. Starts a tag, starts an app tag. This and this are the same thing, /app. This looks very similar to HTML, but inside a JSX file, which is again weird. We have used JavaScript files, we have used HTML files. JSX is a new syntax. We will see what it is. The other file that we see is app.jsx, and it has a function defined at the top. Ignore main.jsx, focus on app.jsx. It has a function defined at the top and some logic here which again ignore, and then it returns some HTML at the end. Interesting. Again a JavaScript file returning some HTML. Let me remove everything here. Just have a top level div, closing div, and a button inside. Would urge you to do the same on your side also. Remove everything, just have the top level div, this button, and then a closing div. Okay? We'll give you guys 30 seconds to catch up. You can remove the imports that are unused now. Just this much code, let's look at. 20 more seconds. All right, let's save this file. Let's not understand anything yet. Let's try to run it locally. Open terminal, run 2 commands for me. Make sure you're in the right folder here. Make sure in the folder that you created with the React application. Run npm install. Run npm run dev. So 2 commands I ran, npm install followed by npm space run space dev. If you run it, it will tell you that I've hosted your front end here. If you go here, you see a button. As you click on the button, a count is going up. Interesting. This looks very similar to what we did yesterday. We created input box, click on a button, something gets appended here. This is slightly different. There is a button which if you click on it, the count goes up. Some of you might be facing issues here and it might not be running for you. I see a few hand raises. Are we good? Shall I proceed? Give me a yes or a no in the chat. Shall we proceed? Yes. Oh, there is a lag. Okay, makes sense. Let me pause. It's fine. Can you guys hear me well? Are we doing fast? Commands. Okay, let me repeat. Let me show the commands one more time. Command number 1 was, if you haven't yet started the application, go to the terminal, run npm create vite at the rate of latest, vite at the rate of latest, press enter, and this will take you through, ask you a few questions which you should give answers to, the folder, the framework, which in my case is React, and a variant which I selected as JavaScript right now. Eventually when we move to TypeScript, we will select TypeScript here. I ran this command. It gave me some boilerplate code. I opened that code in Visual Studio Code. Once I was here, there was a very big file here. I said, get rid of everything. Only get this button bit you keep and remove everything else. But make sure you wrap it inside a div. So div followed by button. This is what I said. Lastly, I said run npm install followed by npm run dev. And once you run npm run dev, oh, there is a lag. I see it now. A website should be hosted which has your front end. Well, basically, this is your website. Given this React code, the question is, the React code is so overwhelming. Number one, why are there so many files here, Harkirat? What is package.json? What is source costed asset? What is app.css? Don't understand anything. Number two, Harkirat, even inside this app.jsx, what is all of this logic? I don't understand anything. I get it. I would not either if I would see this the first time. But hear me out. Assume nothing else is present here. No other file. Just a single file. App.jsx. Just focus on this file. Simple syntax. Let me copy this and paste it in chat in case you want to paste it on your side as well. 12 lines of code. Import something at the top, export something at the bottom, and define a function which does something here and returns a div. I repeat, does some JavaScript logic here, uses this use state variable, don't know what that is, and returns some HTML. This part is super intriguing. A function returning HTML. We have never seen this before. Until now, what have our functions look like? Function sum takes AB as an input, returns A plus B. What is this function? Pehli baat to, the name is capital. Don't know why that is. Number two, it is returning HTML. We have never done return div. This is the first time we are doing this. And also VS Code isn't complaining for this for some reason. If I would do the same thing on Replit or, until now in a .js file, it would start to complain, bhai, what is this? I don't understand. Here VS Code is not complaining because it is a JSX file, and JSX files can support HTML. They are a combination of JavaScript and HTML. And inside a JSX file, you can actually return some HTML from a function. The question is, why is this returning HTML? And given this much code base, I will forget that everything else exists here. Given just these many lines of code, how does this website get rendered, Harkirat? How is this website created given this code base? That is the question. Let's remove this button as well. Let's remove this use state as well. Let's just write hi there here. And if I refresh, I see hi there here. Harkirat, usually when you write hi there inside Replit in a div, it looks like it looks very ugly. Why is this looking so clean? Where are all the styles coming from? If I paste the same code that you've pasted here, if I paste here, oh shoot, you get the idea. It's very ugly. But here, it's very pretty. Why? Because there are some CSS files. Let's remove them. Let's make app.css empty. Let's make index.css completely empty. Remove all CSS from your project. Now let's look at this div which has hi there here. Refresh. Now, can we assume a little bit? This is like my index.html file. Whatever code I am writing here, I am seeing on the website. If I inspect, go to elements, I see body, I see div id equal to root, I see div, I see hi there something. So Harkirat, yes. Now it makes sense. Okay, whatever you're returning here seems very similar to an index.html file. The question is, why go through so much hassle? More importantly, why is this being returned from a function? Why is this not part of a HTML file? Great question. What have we discussed until now? Dynamic websites. What did I say? When you have to create a dynamic website, you write a lot of JS code that does DOM manipulation. If you look at our simple to-do application that we had created, how much HTML was there? Harkirat, this much. How much JavaScript was there? Harkirat, this much. Abhi to likha bhi nahi hai. This is all pending right now. So JavaScript, whenever you're creating a dynamic website, most HTML inside is getting injected via JavaScript. The index.html most probably is empty only. Everything here is getting injected via JavaScript. And that is why, one of the reasons, this is a JavaScript file, sort of, JSX, but assume JavaScript, and it returns you a div. Because this div is somehow getting injected here. Similar to, why did you not ask me the same question, Harkirat, why is function returning HTML when I wrote this function in the beginning of the class? Isn't this function also returning HTML only technically? What is it doing? Creating a div, creating first child, second child, assembling them, and returning a DOM element, right? This is one way of returning some HTML from a function. This is another way of doing it. This is slightly easier because as you use React, you will realize it sort of lets you create your own HTML components or HTML tags. But effectively, this and this are the same. This starts with the small letter. This starts with the big letter. This returns you some HTML. This also returns you some HTML, believe it or not. I mean, it is a JavaScript object, but technically, if you think of it, it's a DOM object that returns you some HTML. So that is how React sort of thought of creating this, framework. You can also actually return something like, create element here. React also lets you do a react.create element with a div.child. Like you actually don't have to use this syntax. You can actually use syntax that looks like this. And that way you can literally create, this function can actually look exactly the same like this, but no one uses this syntax. Everyone uses this syntax. Okay, bhai, I know this needs to return a div. Let me, return it like this rather than returning it, using a create element. Okay. Just how the syntax of React is written and something you need to get comfortable with. Question is, okay, ye sab to theek hai Harkirat. I get whatever I write here. Chalo ek bari ko forget everything. I will assume okay, whatever you are writing here is the index.html file, which is why it appears here. How do you add dynamic nature to it? What was the original code here? It was something here which ignore, and then a button that we have seen until now many times, and on click on it. This looks slightly ugly and different, Harkirat, never seen this before. And then inside the button it says count is count with curly braces. Okay, this is also new, Harkirat. What is curly braces? If I refresh, I see a button, I see count go up. Okay. How do you write the same thing in raw HTML? If I ask you, how will you write the same code in raw HTML? You will do something like this. You will be like, Harkirat, this is what I will do. I will go to Replit. I will create an HTML, CSS and JavaScript file. We're running over a little bit, but let me finish this and then we can start. I will basically do the same thing you've done here, Harkirat. Let me copy this and paste this. But on click, I would call update DOM value. And then here I need to maybe, Harkirat, keep track of a variable. So let count equal to 0. And then I will just call update DOM value, what will update DOM value do? Maybe I'll call it with, I'll just call this, and what will this do? It will do a count equal to count plus 1. And then this will, Harkirat, update the value here to something like, let's see, id equal to btn. And this will just do document dot get element by id btn dot inner html equal to count is new count. I have created a button that as you click on it, value goes up. This function we understand, but what is happening here, Harkirat? As I said, what is count here? Can you think of this as a state variable? Okay, this is something that represents the state of my app. My app is a very basic skeleton. It has a button that says count is and a state variable. So can I say count is a state variable? Yes, sort of. Just like in a to-do application, my to-do array is a state variable. Here, count is a state variable. Anytime I'm clicking on it, the button sort of updates. Now, this is how you define state variables in React. What are state variables? Any variable that React needs to consciously watch. Okay, bhaiya, if this thing updates, DOM is going to change. So I'm going to very aggressively look at its value. And anytime its value changes, which the way to do that is by calling this set count function, which is what's happening here. Let me replace this to this math.random. Math.random returns you a random digit between 0 to 1. If I call this here inside the console, you will see it returns me random values every time I paste it. I said set count to math.random. Again, Harki, the syntax looks very weird. Never seen this before. What is this? Let me make this slightly cleaner. Still looks pretty weird here. Yeah, it is slightly different of a syntax. This is something people were discussing yesterday as well. But bear with me for some time. Assuming the syntax looks something like this. Now if I refresh this page and I click on this, you will see random values getting populated here. What does that tell you? That tells you, okay, what did the application developer had to do? Call set count, update the state variable. And then who took care of actually changing the thing inside the DOM? React did. This is exactly what I was. So basically I just had to call this one global function. This is with the new state. This is similar to the thing that we had defined here. कि हाँ भाई, I will just create a update state function. I will pass in the new state, and then React takes care of actually re-rendering it. Similarly, or updating it. Similarly, again, the syntax is a little weird. On click doesn't look like this, but assuming it's all React syntax is like this, has my life as the developer of this application become very easy? कि हाँ, I just have to call set count with the new state variable, and then the whole re-rendering, this bit of figuring out what to find, what to update, and calling this has been taken over by React. In the end, under the hood, the DOM is still getting updated. Someone is actually calling document.update child, document.append child, whatever. But you are not doing that as the application developer. Your code is pretty lean. Compared to if you try to do the same thing here in Replit, it was slightly harder. So that's a high level of React. Is this difficult? Yes, it is. Especially if this is the first time you're looking at the syntax. Abhi to we have to do 20 different things in React. But this is a high level intuition of React, which I hope was clear, may not be clear as well. We will create offline videos specifically on this part for this week, but that is an end for today. Let's do a poll, then let's do more questions. And if you understand everything by this point, feel free to leave. Would urge you to create your own, these functions. This will give you just open source this. This is a great thing to show and call it like reconcilers in React or whatever you want to call it. Okay, and this is how, React works under the hood. Try to do this assignment yourself. And this is again a very mathematical DSA heavy assignment. If you want to, feel free to, but I'm happy to call it here. Let's do a poll, and then happy to look at doubts after this. Not bad, pretty good, surprisingly. Okay, G. So doubt time 83%, which is like more than I was hoping for. So that's great. Seems like I'm a good teacher. And let's open chat and answer some class related questions first, and then eventually happy to take other questions. But let's ask questions related to the class for today. All right. Lot of questions. Just confused. Can you explain button? This thing, is it like if then? Okay, someone asked. Okay, let's see. Very nice question someone asked. So let me just post it in Replit here and also explain it while I'm at it. This is the question. Just confused. Can you explain the button on click equal to this? Is it like if it's done, then 1, it's otherwise else it's 0, or is it the ID the number? It is ID the number. The thing about, HTML is whenever you're doing a button on click, you actually have to call the function here. And then whatever you're passing in as an argument is the arguments that the function will receive. So there was an argument here, ASD. If I log ASD here, it is whatever you have passed from here. So this is actually the number, like the ID that you want to update. Why do we need states? Is it just like an array of objects? Why are we calling this title description from the backend? Why not add them, call them from the backend, view them in the list? Why do we need these states? So like it's just arrays of objects, and why are we calling the title and description from backend? Well, we are calling it from the backend because that's how a real app works. If I go to docs.google.com and open a specific doc, that content is not in my browser. It's coming from the backend to me, right? Similarly, in a to-do application, you will have a backend that will give you all of these things. If you have a real, full stack to-do application, if you have a local application, that's fine. If you're creating a full stack application, then these will come from the backend, which is why that's what we simulated here. We called it state because, we want to slowly get into React, where state is a very big primitive. If you look at it, it says use state here. So sort of a very big primitive, which is why sort of repeating state again and again. Can you make offline videos on React modules explain a little bit more clearly? Makes sense. Yeah, we will do that. And this was good. Can you explain the React DOM part where you explained what developer will do, what will React do? Yeah. So ChatGPT, my friend, what is React? Is it website creation framework? Or is React DOM the website creation framework? If it is React DOM, then what is React? What is the need of React? Let's see what it says. React is a public JavaScript library for building user interfaces, particularly single page applications. It is not a framework, but rather library focused on a view part of MVC. Blah, blah, blah. React DOM is a companion package of React, while React itself is platform agnostic. The thing to keep in mind, React is not a website framework. It is platform agnostic. You can use React to create mobile apps, native apps, desktop apps, which is the same as native apps, I guess, websites. And then, even aeroplanes, sometimes you see, native machines, they also use React sometimes, and can be used in different environments like native, mobile, whatever. React DOM is specifically for web applications. It provides the DOM specific methods, create element, remove element, append child, things like these, to enable your React code to communicate with the browser's DOM, effectively turning your React component into interactive element. So React DOM is what tells React, hey, you are in a browser right now. This is how you add a child. This is how you remove a child. React Native tells React, okay, bhai, you are in a mobile right now. In Android, this is the way to put something. This is the way to remove something. So React DOM or React Native expose these native functionalities to React. React is just a framework for calculating diff. Okay, bhai, every website, the creators of React said, okay, every website will have a state and a final output. This mapping from state to final output, I will do. As you give me more state, I will tell you, okay, something has been removed, something has been added, something has been updated. And then there will be an auxiliary framework like React DOM or React Native that will actually tell me, React, if I call update, what do I actually need to call? So React was written as a very, high level difference calculating library, not as a, real front end framework. Before React, what project should I make? To try to, basically the difficult bits until now are, number one, any middleware authentication logic. So very basic thing you need to create by this point is an authenticated app, to-do application or something like that, which I will also create during this week as an offline video. You should as well. Any application that's, authenticated, which means only some people can hit some endpoint, is a good thing to create before we get into React. How is server created without Express in React? Well, who said there is no Express in React? There is actually an HTTP server in React. I mean, not exactly in React. When you are running npm run dev, you want ke bhai, if I make a change here, it immediately reaches my website. So if I go here, as you can see, it says ASD. If I change something here, it says ASD. If I remove this, gets removed. So to propagate these changes automatically, someone has created a dev server, which may use Express, may use something else. I think it uses Express only. So that you can propagate these changes to the front end. In fact, I think if I go to this, I will see a WebSocket connection to the backend through which these changes are actually coming. Could be wrong, maybe not a WebSocket connection. Could have sworn it was a WebSocket connection. anyways, the reason this needs to be a server is because this needs to keep pushing updates. Bhai, something has changed, please refresh page. Versus when you actually deploy this in production, React does not need a server at all. It's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. If I run npm run build here, it creates a folder called dist. If I open dist, it has an index.html file, assets, file.svg. If I look at this index.html file, it says there is a script to /assets/some JS file. If I go to assets, look at that JS file. It is a very long JavaScript file which has React and a bunch of other things. So I, in the end, can just send this over. If I serve this, then also I can look at my website. So React does not need a server, especially when you're using it in production. In dev, it's helpful to have a server so that you can, hot reload basically. Why can't you automate the process of payment hash verification for payments done via crypto? Why can't you automate oh babre? Well, because it's hard, right? You have to index the block. I mean, you have to write a lot of code. We can, but that's why payment gateways exist, or crypto payment gateways exist, but it's easier problem to solve. I have learned a lot about Vanilla.js, gave it a lot of time, but have created a lot of projects with it, like Battleship game, all to know that it's almost useless in the real world. Yes. Unless you're creating games where there are frameworks like Phaser and what is it called? Like a bunch of VR frameworks where you will use the Babylon.js. So only some gaming companies actually use, this raw JavaScript logic. No one else does. Or if you're creating something like Figma or Excel Raw, you will use, raw Canvas APIs. But if you're creating a full stack app, yes, it is pretty much, as you said it, I did not, useless. Topics for next week. There is React prerequisites. This class is definitely a prerequisite. Understanding the assignment of this class would be good. That's it. Basically, reconcilers mean update state. You could say that. Reconciler at a high level means what reconciles the input, the output. Given this new input, I will reconcile what the DOM looks like. That is high level what you can say is a reconciler. What is the use of React and React DOM imported? Use of React and React DOM imported. Oh, well, React is what, whenever the state is being updated, is calculating that something needs to change in the DOM. And React DOM is what is telling React that bhai, you are currently in the browser. So you have to call, whatever document dot get element by ID dot, inner HTML and update it to whatever so that this becomes count is 2 or count is 3. So React DOM tells React that you have to call this. React just maintains this state logic. As you can see, use state actually comes from where? It comes from React. So the goal of React is to maintain this state and allow you to define these components. But the goal of React DOM is to actually tell React that this is what you have to call. Again, you don't have to understand any of this. Longest time I don't know this, but good to know for sure. Someone posted an error. Hello sir, I'm a beginner. Did some config with DSA college front end. Apart from code assignments, standout skill myself. So standout clear, we create a lot of projects. So how do you create feature to edit an created to-do app and update the to-do? So here, if you want to create a feature to edit an already created to-do application and update the to-do, editing should be straightforward, right? So basically, if I have to create a to-do application where people are allowed to edit it as well, I would have the div, whatever element, title. Whenever I'm creating the title description, I will also create a button here, which is an edit button. And whenever someone clicks on the edit button, I would change this to be an input box. And then I would put a save button at the bottom. And then, when they save it, it gets saved again. Very hard to do this via DOM. Much easier to do this when you understand React and state and how you can easily propagate currently you're in edit mode or not. So yeah, you can do this by, using the knowledge you've used until now. You just have to, do DOM manipulations by hand. Can you do it in React directly? Yes. Is it easy to do it in React? Yes. Should you do it in React? Probably. Doing when does changes are triggered from the real DOM from virtual DOM? So I guess your question is, when are changes triggered from real DOM to virtual DOM? Changes are flashed from when are changes, very high level. I'm sure I understand your question, but virtual DOM and real DOM, the changes are propagated not immediately. So one big thing that we, skipped when we were creating this update state function was, we are calling it on every state change. But React is different. React kya karta hai? React will sometimes be like, I will wait for a few changes to come. I will bulk call, flush the virtual DOM to the DOM. I won't necessarily immediately Anytime the state changes, put things on the DOM. So React does a bunch of optimizations. It is not necessary that every time you have updated the state will things propagate to the DOM. Sometimes it might take 100 milliseconds more, because React is like, I will wait for 20 state updates to happen, flush them together to the DOM. So that really depends on how React does performance, which it does do a lot of these things, bulk updates and ignoring updates also. I think I could be wrong on this one, but if your state update happens somewhere below where it's not visible, it may or may not delay re-rendering there. Most probably it does not, but like optimization like this, it does. How much React is needed to know for starting front-end dev? Should you go very deep? Yeah, you should go. You should go very depth into, if you're starting out, create solid foundations, and then eventually learn it the normal way, which is हाँ ठीक है component समझ आ गया बना देंगे. Initially, when you're starting out, understand it in depth, and then eventually, if you understand how to create it, just use it and create a lot of projects. Can we do something like an add and on-click to add, update, and delete to do button? Someone else also asked that. Function will call server every time it's pressed, and that way the re-enter only happen to do, no need to unnecessarily. Yeah, you can do that. You can. So the ideal way to do this is WebSockets, Bhavya. Read about them, but high level, whenever you have a real-time app like this, you probably don't want to use HTTP or like do what we did. You probably want to use WebSockets and push events from the server. Create React versus Vite. I use Vite. I think there's some controversy going on here. No idea, but to Vite use karte. Can you explain about React more in offline video? Sure. I mean, it's supposed to come next week. Like, we will start React officially next week. This is just foundation for it, but sure, I can maybe put a video so that it's easy to go through next week. Why does React need a server to render compared to, as I said, it's only in dev mode, not in React mode. And I hope by now React and React DOM difference is clear by the ChatGPT example. Why can't we call set state directly inside a function? Why can't we call set count directly okay, you said why can I do this, Harkirat? This is like classic example where you will once beat your head कि what is happening कि मैं तो सही चीज़ें कर रहा हूँ. This looks right. When I was in HTML, I did this button on click equal to set count, whatever. Try to do the same thing here and it breaks. So unfortunately, React expects that you give it the function signature. Don't actually call it. I repeat, you give it the function signature. So I can define a function here. Increase value by 1. And then here do set count whatever method at random. And then unfortunately, React expects you to give you just the function signature, not actually call it. If you call it, that is the same as doing whatever this returns, which is undefined. That's the same as doing this. So whenever you are in React, you don't have to call the function. You have to give it the function signature, which is why one way of doing it is this. Other way of doing it is that I'll just put this as an anonymous function here, which is why this is what we wrote. But in HTML, this is how you do it. Just how React sort of makes you do on clicks. Would it be less messy while using it? Yes. It will be less messy in the sense that you don't have to write a lot of this logic that you had to write here. How Express server is created without Express in React? The React does use, whenever you're running it in dev mode, it is using some server to actually serve your your code under the hood. Let's go to node modules and see if there is Express here. If there is, then that's what it is using. It could be something else as well, but it does use some HTTP server under the hood. ABCDEFGE for Express. cd dot cd node module cd Express. Express does not use Express. Uses some other server, most probably HTTP server, to actually expose this endpoint. And the reason for that is, as I said, to push updates, not for production mode. Topic for next week. What is difference between React and Angular? React and Angular ka difference. Yeah, देखो high level React, Vue, Angular. All three were state and components, and this is how you slightly opinionated frameworks that let you do the same thing. Update DOM. It depends on what this company is using. React has become the most popular one. Redmine has like slightly skewed syntax as to how they do state and components, and what are components we'll get to in the next week. Even though we create a file with app.js in React, it works completely fine in my VS Code. It does not complain. Yeah, you can actually, it does not matter. There are a few reasons for this. Sometimes you don't have to, in a React project, specify it is a JSX file. Even if you say JS, it works. Hi, I'm actually, many others like me, lagging behind in the following weeks. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm thinking of doing like a recap class in the upcoming week. We'll see to, try to create a project with all the things that we've used until now. But thoda sa you've lagged behind, you will have to catch up now. By using Vite, it creates the boilerplate code. I can also not use Vite. I can just be like, create empty folder, mkdir react app, and then go to react app, and then do npm init, and then do npm install react and react dom. It just creates a very nice boilerplate code for you, which has the app.jsx file, index.js file. So you just have a starting point. That's all. How is Express? There is some library in here in Node modules that is creating like an HTTP server. We can Google it. I'm sure Vite has. How is Vite creating HTTP server in dev mode? There is some library it is using to expose it on a port. Why can't we call set count directly instead of answer that? Are we done with backend? Not really. There's like a few things to cover. If you look at the syllabus, and there's like more depth we need to go in. That's already. But there's maybe 20% backend we've covered. 80% is still left. There is base.js code for the counter button in React in plain vanilla JavaScript for class. Take a look. Okay. Someone posted some code. Let me copy this here. Paste it. Oh, oopsie daisy. No, shoot. Totally missed this. Okay, I have to start from the bottom now. How much React is needed for full stack development? Enough to create projects. Sending the whole state again from the server seems like a waste of network. Why not just send the diff? Yeah, you can do that. Like it patches. Yeah, sure. I mean, you can do that. I mean, in the end, in the real world, you'll probably have a WebSocket server that's just sending the updates. Sure. Yeah. It's just like that's the best example I could think of to show the importance of state. Here, how is the server created? Answered that. I mean, somewhere here should be the answer. Vite creates an HTTP server. Typically uses this library called Koa. So Koa is also an HTTP server similar to Express, which it seems like it uses. So let's go to Node modules. Class 422 Node modules cd Koa. Nope, don't see it. Install Koa. Some HTTP server it uses. Now which one you have to figure out and tell me now. But yeah, I'm sure there's some HTTP server in this node modules that it is using to start the HTTP server. Why can't we call set count directly? I answered that. Could you explain React versus DOM? I answered that. What is window dot do? It's just if you want to access any global thing, which in our case was document. You can do document. You can do window dot document dot get element of ID. It's just a global way to access global variables, which you can just access directly as well. Why original HTML? Can you explain? What does that mean? What do you mean by that? Topic for next week, we'll start React. What is the use of React? React dog answer that. Can you connect a simple frontend with backend? Please tell me calculate sum of two functions in class. I can write frontend code as well as backend code as well, but I can't understand how to communicate with each other. There it will be pretty simple. Now here is where you have to understand another hook. So we have use state. There's another thing similar to it called use effect, which you will have to use here if you want to connect this to a backend, which for the sake of everyone, I don't want to explain what this is because this will take at least half an hour in itself. But if you want to connect a React frontend to a backend, you will create like an effect here that runs on mount and send a fetch request, and whatever you get back as the response, you will store in state, whatever, of course, convert it to JSON, all that jazz. And then once you do, your backend thing has propagated to state, which you then render. Is this state you're talking about the same as a state we store in Redux? Yes, very similar. Redux is what's called a state management tool. So do you need Redux or Recoil? No, you can actually work just with this much, but this gets a little ugly, which is why frameworks like Redux or Recoil came into the picture, which, as you said, have this concept of state, which is the same thing as this thing right here. Why can't you automate the process? Okay, answer that. Bhai, use my time like or kuch nahi dete. It's just it'll take some time to build that. What is reconciler? Very high level, ye concept. The concept of taking an old input, new input, finding the diff and figuring out what functions to call and reconcile the final output is what's called a reconcile. There's a more official definition, I'm sure, but high level, if you have to understand the update state function that we call is sort of like a reconciler. Why can't you call? Okay, answer that. Is whenever a set interval you have used in a sync await, Here from async function, you're getting the result will perform await. In Windows, so you have used async await, yes. Here, from which async function are we getting the results to perform await? I had something like this, right? Set interval every 5 seconds, made this an async function. The reason for this is I'm going to do a bunch of asynchronous calls inside, await, fetch, whatever, right? That's why I had to make this an asynchronous function. Question you have is which the async function we're getting result to perform await. Unsure if I understand your question here. Harika. Basically, reconcile means update state. You could say that. Basically, reconcile means update state. Yes, the process of reconciling an old input and new input. There is maybe a better definition that I'm happy to cover in the next class. How is the server created with, okay, answer that. There is some library here that's doing that. Why can't you okay, answer that. 3 questions. Okay, answer that. What does window dot do? Again, it's just a lets you access global variables, which you can like this as well. Maybe there's some nuance here that I'm missing, but mostly that. I don't think no one uses window dot anything. Topic for next week, answer that. React, how is the server created without answer that. Same question bhai baar kyun poochhte yaar? Unable to copy from chat. Are you able to select, right click and copy? And if the answer is no, then okay, I'll not paste things in chat and put them in slides, which is what I tried today as well. But yeah, I'm able to call. Okay, answer that. So why can't you call set count? Okay, answer that. Hello sir, I'm beginner, but some coding for D. Okay, answer that. Okay, same set of questions here. Someone said missing script dev. Open your package.json. Check if is there a dev script here. If yes, check are you in the right folder here. You should be in the same folder where you have package.json in your terminal, and then you should see the dev command running. If React has virtual DOM and makes it faster, then what does million.js do? I don't know what million.js does. I didn't even know that was a front-end framework. I'm sure they have like some similar, concept to have in memory representation of the current DOM. Why can't we call? Okay, answer that. Wait, double questions. I try my best to answer everything, but it gets very hard if they're repeated. So one last set of questions, guys, but don't repeat your questions. I will try to answer everything. All right. On the bottom, is there any centralized way to track the payment done by public addresses? There is no centralized way to do it. If you want to do this, you basically have to index all the blockchains and figure out, like, have some interested addresses that you create. This is very hard to do, by the way. You also have to sweep addresses, which is hard. Like, you have to create a brand new address for every user, and then anytime you send a payment, you have to send some ETH to it to sweep over the USDC and track that payment. It's very hard what you're trying to do, which is why I haven't really touched it ever. Maybe I've missed, but have we done some basic Node.js reliability and shifted to front end? Can you be explained if we are going to cover how we are going to cover the topics? We're basically going to try to start creating projects as soon as possible, then make them better and better. So we understood backends a bit, now we're understanding front ends a bit, then we'll go again into backends and keep context switching between them. How to get via intermiddleware? I'm unsure. Where intermiddleware? Unsure. I don't understand that question. Sorry, Harshit. By internet, so many people say Node.js is slow, single-threaded. Java is better option. What do you think of Java full stack? And MERN stack is the proof. Is MERN stack future proof? वो तो सबको ही पता है कि JavaScript is slow, but it is also like highly adopted. PHP is also very slow, but it's like 33% of the internet is PHP. So this is just frameworks adopted, and irrespective of whether it's good or not, it just stays. Native Node.js HTTP server. This is the default server. So देखो यही मुझे लगा था. Somewhere it uses the native HTTP server that Node.js provides you. Vite does not use Express or some other library like Kua. CTC. How do you become confident? Concept, just build a lot of projects is how you become confident, like do a lot of mistakes, and that's how you learn. Is there any centralized? Okay, answer that. Any key difference between framework and library? हाँ यार होते तो हैं यार देखो framework. Now there is a lot of nuance here. I've incorrectly answered this in like an interview once. पर क्या होता है difference? Framework is something that lets you do 10 different things. Library. Express is a library. React is a framework. अब इसका क्या मतलब है? It's a hard thing to say. React comes with like lets you do 10 different things, and Express just lets you do one, I guess. Very hard, very nuanced, difference between them, but like standard interview question, yes. This is how I would answer it if someone asks me. Would you need a video of JS program? Would need a video of DOM, right? Way JS, DOM, JS. Okay, I'll try to. I thought DOM was clear, but we'll see. If state const, how can we change it? Oh, great question. ये पूछा ना सवाल तुमने बहुत बढ़िया. Very good question. You are a good question, but your question hurt me. तो देखो यार, it is not the array is constant. Okay, let me do this. Let a equal to 1 comma 2 or const a equal to 1 comma 2. A of 1 equal to 2. A of 1 equal to 3. Can you see I am able to update the first element of an array? Even though the array is constant, I am able to update the second element, the first element. Why? Because the array is still a constant. I'm not pushing things here. The reference to the first element and the second element in memory are still the same. Only the value is changing. So similarly, if you have an array or an object, I can also do an object. Const obj equal to name Harkirat. Now obj is a constant, but if I do obj.name equal to something new, it does get changed. So you can actually update the values of constant objects and arrays. What is the folder structure when you create this thing? There are so many files. Yeah, there are a bunch of files. We will discuss what some of these are eventually. For now, the one to focus on is app.jx, but next week we'll start React, where we'll do it. Please focus more on backend. I think you've done enough. I mean, you've done 3 weeks we discussed backend. Yeah. I mean, we need to. Don't worry, we will. What is the advantage of using TypeScript over JS? We will get to it. I mean, we'll get there when we reach TypeScript. What is the difference between framework and library? Don't have a good answer. Can you share all the slides? They are present. They'll be present in the offline video right next to the slides button. And then, as I mentioned, they are all present here on this URL. Before next week, just try to at least complete all the MongoDB stuff, the offline videos, create an authenticated application. That's the high level. Very big questions here. Why are learning React only when there are frameworks there that React does? By Angular, Svelte, there is no end to how many frameworks you can learn now. We have to finish things up in 6 months. We have to do the most industry-ready things, which React is the thing, which is what we'll do. I don't think we'll get into Angular at all in this cohort. When is Web3 course coming? No timeline yet. Can you create Web3 jobs channel in Discord? Sure, I can do that. Whole comp refresh on state change or just number inside DOM. Whole comp refresh on state change. Oh, whole component refreshes. Yes, the whole component refreshes, which right now the component just has a button, so just the button refreshes, but eventually we'll get to how you optimize re-renders, don't worry. If we display some big paragraph like documentation, should I add database, then fetch it from the backend using the front end, or directly write it in React? What is the best approach of doing this? You need to write it in React, but still need to get it from the backend. Unsure if I understand the question well. In the early days, what did companies prefer? Well, there were some frameworks as I said, like jQuery, Backbone.js before React came, and now React is the thing. App make use Flutter, Kotlin, or app make using React Native. There I use React Native because that's what I've experienced in, but does not mean Flutter is I think the popular framework today. What project should I make to understand high level JS before React? What project should I make to understand the high level of JavaScript before React? A full end-to-end authenticated project. Is there any sentence? Answer that. Why exactly read? What? Okay, answer that. Till next week. Answer that. Answer that. What is the? How is to-do ID propagated? I mean, how is ID equal to ID of the to-do? Want to delete? Can you explain marks are done wala? Marks has done function. Okay. हाँ तो यार उसमें ऐसा था. Look at this function. It takes an ID as an input, which is a number, gets the parent, and then sets the second child पे done. And whenever we are creating the button, we say on click mark as done ID. Whenever on click will be called for the second div, mark as done will be called with 2. Whenever on click will be called for the fifth div, mark as done will be called with 5. So that is why, as you know, this ID gets propagated correctly here, and that's how this gets updated. Should I prefer DOM or React? I mean, understand DOM and then move to React. You don't have to write all of this complex logic. This is just an assignment to learn things, but frankly, as I said, no one uses it, so you don't have to understand it. Cool. Thanks, guys. This was great and slightly exhausting, if I'm honest, but I'm happy. काफी लोगों को समझ आ गई. So from here, next week is going to be React. And actually creating projects like end-to-end authenticated projects. Offline videos for this week is going to be GSOC setup videos, GSOC trying to solve some issues videos, and MongoDB authentication, things like this. All right. I will see you guys next week. Have a good one, and thank you for joining. Bye bye. Have a good night.